All right, hello everybody. I'm now live, as you can tell. It's been a while since I've done a live stream, so forgive me if I'm a bit awkward or kind of stumble over my words, which I normally do anyway. Um, Probably know who I am, but my name is Colin LaSwear. I run a publishing company, independent publisher called By Odin's Beard RPG, and I make tabletop role playing games. So I'm here today to talk about Midnight of the Century, which is my newest game. It is a pre. Sorry, I always gotta walk through this. It is a mid '90s pre-apocalyptic serial killer investigation TTRPG. So it's inspired by stuff like Millennium, the TV show, Silence of the Lambs, Seven, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a cool game, and I'm excited to talk about it today. Um, Hopefully, I'm coming through okay, audio wise. I've got a fan in the room. I'm not sure if that'll get picked up, but just if I'm not coming through, if you have any issues hearing me, just let me know. Drop a message in the chat, and I'll see what I can do with it. I've also got a mischievous cat that wanders around my office occasionally, so you'll probably see him popping up here and there, see his tail, that sort of thing. Right. So, what is Midnight of the Century? I've given a brief kind of elevator pitch for it. You can see I've got a version of it here. Um, so it is my version of closest thing. It's my version of a Millennium role playing game. So Millennium was a TV series. Audio coming through good. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, Millennium was a TV series in the '90s. Started in '96 and went to '99. It was created by Chris Carter, who also created the X Files, and kind of it was a conspiracy, apocalyptic, end of the world serial killer thriller TV series. It was really cool. It was one of my favorites growing up. Um, it only lasted 3 seasons, and really the first 2 seasons are the best. The third one kind of goes off the rails a little bit, which is kind of to be expected. But the first 2 seasons are really good, and season two ends like in such a perfect way that you could have ended the show there pretty much. So I wanted to do a Millennium TTRPG because my previous games, Rune Cairn and We Deal in Lead, were kind of inspired by other things as well, and were my versions of those other things. So Rune Cairn was my version of a Dark Souls role playing game, and We Deal in Lead is my version of a Dark Tower, Stephen King's A Dark Tower role playing game. So Midnight of the Century is my version of a Millennium role playing game, and the title comes from one of the episodes of Millennium, which was called Midnight of the Century. So I thought it fit for the premise and kind of an evocative title, and essentially means that the century is almost done, like it is midnight. But I also tie that into some of the thematic and mechanical concepts in the game as well. Yeah, yeah. Cat Ranger has made his first appearance. You can see his ear sticking up potentially. So it's a bit warm at the moment, so I'm going to be drinking a lot of water. So please forgive me. So, Midnight of the Century, I'm running what's called an itch fund for it now. So if you're familiar with crowdfunding, something like Kickstarter or BackerKit, Itchfunding's a kind of a lower impact version of that, a low key version of crowdfunding. So there's a website called itch.io, predominantly for video games, like independent video games. So you can play usually PC games, but it's also for other like smaller systems. But they also have a really good tabletop role playing game contingent. They're called physical games, which kind of confuses people sometimes on Itch, because they're not digital, even though it's a digital book that you download. It's a PDF that you download. So on Itch, you can do something called Itchfunding, which means that you can kind of put up a version of your game for sale, and all proceeds of those sales go towards developing the full version of the game. So that's what I'm doing now. So right now, live on Itch, on biodensbeardrpg.itch.io, you can see that I've got a copy of Midnight of the Century up. So it's what I'm calling the primer. So it's essentially a quick start or an introduction to the game, Midnight of the Century. So what that means in practical terms, it's kind of a slice of the full game. So it has the introductory rules, or there's the kind of core rules. It has rules on making an investigator. It has an introductory investigation. It's got a bit of an introduction to the setting, which is the Pacific Northwest of the 1990s. So specifically, that's, in the case of Midnight of the Century, that is Vancouver, Seattle, and Portland, that kind of area. The Cascadia bioregion is what it's also referred to as, or can be referred to as. So that's the primary focus. So Millennium was set in that region, mainly Seattle, but it was filmed in Vancouver and British Columbia. It's a Canadian production, just like X-Files was originally. 7 is set in a kind of an unknown, mysterious western city that could be Seattle, could be Los Angeles. It's deliberately vague. Twin Peaks is set in Washington, and that's the very that's the vibe that I'm going for. So a city near the sea, surrounded by forests, and the forests are dark and old and overgrown, and so there's that mystery of kind of the urban sprawl mixed with the old forests and the old mystery of the forests, and kind of turning serial killers, adding serial killers into that mix. And it's always raining because it's always raining. So yeah, that's kind of a snapshot of the game and Itchfunding. So I started initially with an Itchfund goal of £1,000, and that would mean that I would do a hardcover print run of the full game, Midnight of the Century. So we've reached that, and we've reached the second goal, which was £2,000, and that was for additional investigations, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's bringing in other writers to write bring in guest writers to write some additional investigations for Midnight of the Century. So I'm happy to say that I've engaged with 3 guest writers, and hopefully more, but 3 for sure. So they are Chris Bissett, who's written for stuff, who's written their own games, The Wretched, done a lot of Mork Borg stuff, which is really cool. Chris has also written for Pathfinder, and some of the Fallout as well. So Chris is going to be writing an investigation for me. Then Graham Barber, who is on Blue Sky as POC Gamer, has written for Pathfinder, 2E, has written for Cyberpunk Red. I believe Graham's written for Pathfinder. I know for sure he's written for Cyberpunk Red. And he's kind of from Vancouver, which is perfect for the kind of knowledge of the local setting. And then Emma Lambert from WebDM is going to be writing a third investigation for me, which is great. WebDM was one of my favorite YouTube D&D/TTRPG channels, and she and WebDM have produced Weird Wastelands book, which is really good. It's kind of like post-apocalyptic Dark Sun-esque setting guide and adventure guide and kind of rule book for D&D 5e. So I'm excited for that. And I'm also waiting on hearing back from a few folks around more guest writers. So that should be really good. So yeah, that was the second goal, which we've hit. The third goal, which we're nearing now, is to release or include a random investigation generator. So that's going to include like random killers, random setting within those three primary cities. It'll include clues, victim, that sort of thing. So you'll basically be able to randomly roll up an investigation that you can run yourself. Connected to that, it's also going to bring in solo rules. So you can use the investigation generator for yourself, and you can generate roll up a random investigation that you can run for your party or for your group, or you can run through it solo. So I think having random investigation generator is crucial when you've got solo rules, because a lot of the mystery is gone if you know who the killer is. So having solo rules, I think it's going to be an interesting design challenge to find a way to do a solo investigation and make it interesting and engaging as much as it would be if you were running it for kind of your group, your standard group. So we're almost at that point now. I think at this point we're less than 400 pounds away from unlocking solo rules and the random investigation generation. So I'm excited for that. I should have mentioned the Itch Fund. There are 3 different reward tiers, for lack of a better phrase. So there's the kind of the digital, so you can get the book itself, the PDF itself. So that's £5. You can get the PDF for the Midnight of the Century primer. And you'll also get a £5 voucher off the full book when it gets released if you buy it from my shop. The second tier is £25, and that gets you the same thing. You get the PDF, but you'll get a £25 voucher off the book when you buy it from my shop. Because I don't know exactly how much it's going to be, so it's going to be around £30 to £35, I think. So that gets you a lot of the way there towards like getting the book for yourself. Then the final tier is £60, and that gets you the primer, the PDF for the primer. It gets you the physical primer. So I've printed these up, as you can see. So if you back at the £60 level, you get a copy of this, and I'll send it to you wherever you are in the world, assuming there's no active war going on at the moment. So I'll ship that to you for free anywhere in the world, included in the £60 tier. And then you'll also get a copy of the hardcover book when that comes out. You'll have to pay for shipping for that, just because shipping is kind of all over the place at the moment. But you will get the primer you'll get without having to pay for shipping. And I'll send that out. I'm sending those out now. So you'll get it basically now, and then later on when the full book is out, you'll get a copy of the hardcover as well. So those will be sent out from my shop. So that's £5, £25, or £60. So there's still, like, you can absolutely still back at those tiers if you want to get a copy of the primer, if you want to get a physical signed copy of the primer. And then if you want to get the book, the kind of hardcover book when that comes out. My plan is for them to come out, all being well, October or November, kind of November at the latest, because there's there's 2 TTRPG conventions in November, or November, December, Thought Bubble and Dragon Meat, or kind of 2 conventions that I sell at. So I want to have the books ready for them, So that's kind of the plan, is October, November, to have the actual physical books done and here, ready for shipping. So there are other unlocks as well that I've kind of kept close to the chest a little bit. But if you've seen my other itch funds for the Cairn Bestiary and for Redeal and Lead, you'll probably, and for the Kickstarter I did for Warden Saga, Cairn Warden Saga, you'll probably have an idea of what one of the unlocks is going to be. So I'll kind of leave it there for now. Things are still up in the air a bit with that. But yes, future unlocks are exciting. I also have an idea that I think it would be cool to do some like notebooks, investigator notebooks for Midnight of the Century, that include the logo that I made for it. So you can see here, that's kind of, I haven't really explained what that is, and I guess that would make sense to explain. So that's the logo for Midnight of the Century. It's a stylized version of an Ouroboros. So the snake eating its own tail, you'll definitely have seen it around. It's a circle, snake eating its own tail. So that's the symbol of the Millennium Group in Millennium, and that's the symbol, my version is a symbol for the Oroboro Group, which is the name of the kind of multinational corporation that you work for, that you are a freelancer for, a consultant investigator for. So that's kind of the symbol for it. So I thought it'd be cool to have some notebooks printed with that symbol on it. But that brings in a bunch of different practical issues. But kind of hopefully I'll be able to swing that and have those included in the 60-pound level. We'll see. That's the plan, at least. Forgive me for jumping around a bit, but it's kind of how my brain works sometimes. So I think it's worth giving an introduction to Oroboro too, because that's something that's going to be expanded on in the full book. So all of the kind of the main setup is taken from, or it's heavily inspired by Millennium. So there's this group that offers consultation services for law enforcement. So if there are strange or unusual cases that the cops or feds can't deal with themselves, can't resolve themselves, they bring in outside help, especially if it's occult or ritualistic or kind of any kind of out of the realm of standard experience. So as investigators, you work for that company. So you may have been a cop in a previous life. So when you were younger, you might have been a cop, but all investigators in Midnight of the Century aren't cops. So you might have been one, but you're not a cop at the moment. But you do work with cops, and kind of that may start to change depending on how the world shifts as the investigations go on. So when you first start, you'll be working for Oroboro, and they'll bring you in and you'll consult on different cases, like strange murders or kidnappings, that sort of thing. So when they need expert, kind of external expertise, so you'll be brought in. And at the moment, there are 2 specialisms that you can kind of portray. So there's the profiler, which is kind of the archetype from stuff like Manhunter, and Red Dragon, and Hannibal. So Will Graham was a profiler. Frank Black from Millennium is a profiler. So in Millennium and in Midnight of the Century, the profiler can kind of see through the killer's eyes, see what the killer sees. Is it psychic? Is it like a psychic ability? Is it purely training or experience? It could be both. It could be something else. It could be some kind of external influence. But you can see what the killer sees, and that will give you the edge on finding the killer and stopping them. The other specialism is what I'm calling the Occultist. So that's something like a good John Constantine from Hellblazer and the Constantine film. Primarily the comic. This is the inspiration. As an aside, all my kind of inspirations are pre-2000, so 1999 and previously. So the 90s versions of John Constantine. So yeah, either an occultist like that, or like Johnny Smith from The Dead Zone, the Christopher Walken film. There's also a TV series. Basically, you have the ability that you can either touch something or someone and get a flash of insight of the past, present, or future. So it's kind of like psychometry. So you can read things through touch. And with the profiler, you don't control when these glimpses happen, but you do control it as an occultist. So you can choose when if you like touch someone. I mean, obviously someone can touch you, and that could trigger it, but generally, you choose when you want to kind of engage that ability, and then you'll get a flash of insight. You can see like in the Dead Zone, Johnny sees like the killer, or sees like someone's child is in danger, or see like someone's mother is still alive, that sort of thing. So you get a flash of insight, and that is more kind of overtly, explicitly like supernatural. So you can play one of two specialisms at the moment, and then I do have plans for more specialisms. So that's what I'm working on now. So initially, when I'd had the idea, I had 6, and some of them are very similar to each other. Like I had the profiler, I had the detective, and I had an agent. So those are very, very similar, all 3 of those. I do think there's kind of space for a detective, like a private detective type character. So I think I might bring in someone like that, and then a journalist as well. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on now, is those extra specialisms, just to see, because it has to be something interesting. It has to be something that plays differently than the current specialism. So it has to be different than a profiler, different than an occultist, and it also has to be interesting enough, because with the existing 2 specialisms, you've got cool abilities that you can use. You can talk to the dead as an occultist. You can see through the killer's eyes as a profiler. You need something that's that engaging, or at least kind of won't put you at a disadvantage if you choose the journalist. And obviously, these all have to work together as well, because the primer, Midnight of the Century primer, at the moment it works best with 2 players, like 1 warden, 1 GM, and 1 investigator, 1 player. So 1 GM, 1 player. But obviously I want to be able to have a full group, and I want everyone to be able to work together and have different strengths. So that's, for the full game, that's the idea, is to be able to have a full group of people. Obviously having 4 profilers, you'd be stepping on others' feet and that sort of thing. So you need to be able to work together. And so having separate specialisms that complement each other while still being interesting enough, that's kind of the challenge that I'm looking at now. And then obviously I'm going to be expanding out the background of Oroboro, because they're a mysterious group. So I'm going to be fleshing out what their public history is and what their actual history is, what their secret history is, because they've been around a lot longer than you think. And they have their fingers in a lot of different pies, and they have a lot of different connections. Being deliberately vague, probably don't need to. There's some supernatural connections that Oroboro has, and because the game's about the end of the world and stopping the end of the world, that's kind of on the face of it what you're doing. Because these serial killers are a symptom of kind of a world falling to chaos, and the closer it gets to the millennium, the more that the chaos will kind of grow. And that's reflected in the mechanically in the doom phases. So you've got 4 different doom phases: midnight, sorry, dawn, midday, dusk, and midnight. The later the doom phase, the more chaos there is in the world. So most investigations will be set at dawn. Like the introductory investigation, for instance, is a doom phase dawn. So that means it's not as difficult. There's not as much chaos in the world. Things work pretty much as you'd expect them to work in like a typical contemporary world, or at least a world of the 90s. So yeah, you'll get more of Oroboro, their actual, what their goals are, their kind of public goals, and what their actual goals are, and what their actual history is. So you'll get more of that. I'm also going to expand on the setting. So I'm going to have, for each city, I'm going to split it up into the different neighborhoods, and there'll be interesting like sights to see in each neighborhood, and NPCs, that sort of thing. Obviously this isn't a simulation, so it's not going to be historically accurate, but I'm going to like kind of get as close as I can without it being a burden, essentially. So it's not going to be an exact replica of 1990s Vancouver, but there'll be enough kind of touchstones that it seems like, oh yeah, I can see that reminds me of Vancouver in the 90s. So there's going to be each city is going to be fleshed out a little bit, so that there's you can set your adventures in any of the cities, really, or you can use specifically, like if you just want to have all your investigations be in Seattle, then you can do that. The introductory investigation is set in Seattle, and I've kind of followed that rule of thumb, or that kind of, not rule, I followed that kind of guideline around having it be close to the actual city, like the actual Seattle of the 90s, because I wasn't there in the 90s. Yeah, so that's the kind of lore, and the setting will be expanded on. I'm also going to expand on the supernatural elements of the world. So what I'm calling magic, rituals, and outer powers. So that's something that I've touched on a little bit. I teased at a little bit in the primer. So essentially, those are the angels and the demons of the world, because Millennium and kind of the things that I'm drawing from have clear forces of good and evil, while they might not align with kind of standard morality, but there are like clear 2 definite divisions. So that's kind of the model that I'm using as well. So I'm calling them messengers and the fallen. So that's kind of, I'll be expanding on those and how they manifest in the world, what they look like, what they can do, what happens when you come across one, that sort of thing. And that ties into the fracture table a little bit. So in the primer, I'll flip through it, flip through the PDF, and I'll show you. But there's some redacted sections where, like, that stuff that's hinted at, and that will be further explained in the full book. That might be a good time to actually shift to showing the PDF, as if I haven't bored everyone so far. Right, just bear with me here. Thanks for letting me know. I didn't have the microphone carried across to the other scene, so bear with me a moment here, and I'm going to do that. Okay, hopefully that's better. Am I coming through now on the audio? I know it. There's a bit of a delay, so it takes some time to copy across. So I will remember what point I left off, assuming that that is coming through decently well now. All good. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Hector. Okay. So, right. So this is the primer at the moment. Sorry about that, everyone. All good. Right. So yeah, this is the primer. This is I'm trying to remember what I was saying. The version on Itch is the most up-to-date version. So the version you get on Itch is always going to be the most up-to-date, and I'll kind of provide updates as we go. But yeah, so I've got some sections that are redacted here. So this is pointing at things to kind of look out for, and these are things that are further expanded in the full book. And it's more like teases in the primer. And then I've got these sections. These are like markdown or notes from someone who knows what's going on. But these kind of point you towards where you sections where you might want to dig a bit deeper into things, or where you should be questioning, or where you might want to question whether or not everyone, like, people are telling you the truth, or if they're hiding something from you, that sort of thing. Right, and then I've got this kind of like tourism advertisement, but then with a bit of information, like a bit of note saying, don't believe everything they tell you, that sort of thing. Okay. Right. Yeah, so Oroboro history, so that will be further expanded on. What are they hiding? Don't believe their lies, that sort of thing. And then I got some notes on creating investigator, what you might want to look out for, kind of giving you tips on, like, if you want to play this kind of role, then choose this specialism, or that sort of thing. Yeah, this one here. Best you not worry about this too much just yet. That will come into it in later Doom phases. This, what I was mentioning earlier, this kind of fracture section on outer powers, this refers to one side of the outer powers. Obviously, that will be fully expanded on in the full game. Okay, and then the uncanny, that sort of thing. Okay, rather than kind of just well, I will do a flip through of the book, and then I'll come back and do some character creation. So yeah, these are always kind of, I wanted to have it be like, when you're playing the game, you want to be questioning things, because there's always, like, especially working for an organization or corporation like Oroboro, they've been around a long time. They've had their finger in a lot of pies. There's going to be a lot of kind of stuff buried in their closets, a lot of skeletons in their closets. So, is everything they're doing on the up and up? Can you trust everything that they're doing? Why are they doing what they're doing? So I wanted to have that kind of baked into it. Be like, you're working for them, presumably doing something for the better good, for the greater good. But is it really? How is it benefiting them? What do they have to gain out of it? Obviously, like saving people's lives. That's on the face of it, but there's more to it than that. So I always want to have that like baked into it. Like that's why you're not cops. You're kind of working with cops, but you always have to be questioning like why people are doing things they're doing. What's the real reason behind things? That sort of thing. This is the introduction to the setting on the edge of apocalypse. So Seattle, Vancouver, Portland. And I give a bit of, for those who weren't around during the 90s and didn't have this kind of technology, just give a bit of information on what you had access to, what it would do, what you can do then, like kind of what you can't do then that you can do now, that sort of thing. And then just set some like ground rules or some like guidelines around doing how to establish the setting, like how to kind of portray the setting, that sort of thing, if that makes sense. And then here is the introductory investigation. So something I'm really proud of here is the timeline. You can see it best when it's in a two-page spread like this. So because there are a couple of different things that can happen in an investigation. So you've got doom ticks, and then you've got injects. So a doom tick is something that will happen at a set time unless the investigators stop it. So this is kind of pulling from different mechanics from different role-playing games. So basically, if you think of it as a timeline, like this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Person's going to get kidnapped here, they're going to get killed here, their body's going to be found here, that sort of thing. So that's what will happen if the investigators don't do anything. So I find that very useful if they're spending a lot of time like investigating different regions, and if they're spinning their wheels a bit, which always happens, stuff is going to happen in the background. Like the world will keep going without them, basically. So that can kind of crop up in the form of an inject. So that's going to be something that happens at a set time, or after some, like basically it's like they get a phone call, they get a lab report back, that sort of thing. So different things to help continue the investigation along, like help drive it along. So you've got on this timeline, you've got the different shifts, which is kind of each day is split into 4 shifts. So that's something that I first saw in Blade Runner, the role-playing game. So you've got morning, afternoon, evening, and night. So different things will happen in different shifts. And then you'll have doom ticks and then injects. So to keep everything straight and to keep everything kind of manageable, then I made this timeline. So every investigation is going to have a timeline like this, where you can see this is where things started, this is where it escalates, and this is kind of worst case scenario if the investigators don't do anything, or if they fail to stop the killer, or if they fail to do X, then this is going to happen. So you can see here the Doom Tick 5 is the ritual's complete and there's an earthquake, basically. And so the investigation has, like, this is the briefing for it. And the dossier. So this is kind of information on the killer, information on the victim, information on the murder or murders. So this is what can be drawn on during the investigation. Like, this is what the investigators, the players, will be finding out. This is just kind of all in one place for the warden. So they know, like, ahead of time, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is what kind of what's involved. And then this is what the investigators can know. And this is the source where they'll know that information from. And then this is the splitting it up into the different doom ticks on the doom clock, the injects, and then the location. So every time you go to a new location, there's different NPCs to interact with. There's different areas to explore and search, different information, different clues to gather, that sort of thing. And yeah, different possibilities. And I've also put in here, because you can go to a location at a different time. So depending on when on the timeline, when you get to that location, you can stop a kidnapping. You can kind of interrupt the killer. You could like stumble across the killer. You might be too late and they've already kidnapped someone else, that sort of thing. So depending on when you get to a location, that will determine what information you get and kind of what's happened, essentially. So yeah, this is the kind of introductory investigation. I've called it the Widening Gyre, which is a reference to the first episode of Millennium, where is it Yeats? This is where it's failing me. My poetry knowledge is failing me. It's a quote of a famous poem, essentially, and the killer recites it. The center cannot hold, that sort of thing. So yeah, it is pronounced gyre, or at least I pronounce it gyre. I'm assuming that's right. Then Appendix N. So this is all the inspirations for the game, from movies, from TV, comics, and other tabletop games. And then I've got a QR code here. It's also a link that you can click, and that'll take you to the website for Midnight of the Century, where it has kind of my development log. It has these Appendix N's, but it also has a link to the letterbox list. So I've gathered up all of the movies from the 80s and 90s that influenced Midnight of the Century, and I put those into a letterboxed list, so you can go through and see, and kind of see if you've seen them, if there's anything you haven't seen yet. And then a Spotify playlist that's made up of music from the 90s, some 80s, but mostly 90s. That essentially, it's music that I used to listen to in the 90s, because I grew up in Canada in the 90s. So that's kind of give you a taste of that, and I'll be adding more to that as it goes. And then that's the back of the primer. So this is one thing that I'm fairly proud of here, is this Oroboro logo. So this is the in-world logo for Oroboro, for the Oroboro Group. And I like that it's a palindrome, and yeah, just happy with that design. So you've got the actual Oroboro, the old Oroboro logo in the middle as well. But I like that it's like an in-world corporate logo on the back of the actual physical book. And then of course human-made, no AI used in this whatsoever, and no AI will ever be used in any of my work. Okay, so that's the primer. So I'm going to go back here. Realize that I've been kind of talking nonstop for 45 minutes, which is, I guess, to be expected. It's the live stream. I'm going to pause there, get some water, and if anyone kind of has anything any questions they want to ask, or anything you want to know about the game, or kind of future development. All right, well, I will continue on making an investigator, and I'll kind of answer questions as and when they pop up. All right, so you can see I've got all these random tables. So I'm going to just follow the steps, and I've got some handy character sheets that I've printed out, as you can see here. So I will be filling these out. Okay. All right, so names. I need D100. So these names are, I generated this list by going through and finding the most popular names. I think it was in America, so it's not kind of ideal to the region, but the most popular names from the 60s, the most popular baby names from the 60s. My thinking that most investigators are above 30 or older than 30 years old, so most of them would have been born in the 60s. Therefore, these are their most likely names. These are the names that they most likely would have in the 90s. Right. So we've got 52. That is Juan. Okay. And Juan's last name. That is 99. Very lucky. Wheeler. Okay, Juan Wheeler. Right, traits. Let's go 10. So that is, he has a round physique. Sorry, I'm assuming, I'm going to say he, him. So even though this is a game set in the 90s, it's a game that's made in 2025. So there's a section for pronouns. So his pronouns are his pronouns. His pronouns are he, him. Juan's pronouns are he, him. Okay. Round physique. And I'm just going to go through and roll one for each of the kind of, I'm pointing at it, that's not very useful. So these, each of these tables as a D10. Okay. He has a, sorry, physique is, the first table is, failed at the first hurdle again. Okay. Although there could be a round physique, but it's actually, oh no, it is round physique, yeah. So that's why I kind of got tripped up. So he's got a round physique with a round face. I probably will update that, just because it's not that interesting to have round. I'm just making notes to myself. This is the beauty of having something in active development, is that I can be like, oh yeah, I need to fix that for the full book. And the PDF is always going to be have the most up-to-date information. Okay. So for now, he's got a round physique with a round face, and he's got rosy skin. His eyes are shining. And his hair is shaved. Juan speaks in a blunt manner. And he is humble, yet cruel. Interesting. Maybe that stems from him speaking in a blunt manner, is that he's cruel. Maybe his bluntness can come across as cruelty. Someone said, love that you're taking us along with the development. Yeah, I always like to be transparent when I'm doing game development and stuff, just so that people can see what goes into it and like what mistakes I run into and like stuff that you don't see. You can read through a book, 10 or 15 times, and you won't, like, you kind of start ignoring all the issues. But when you actually look to start playing it, or like you hit the right combination of things and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that, that's a bit redundant. or that's a duplication, that doesn't make sense, that sort of thing. It always happens. Okay, so those are the traits. Specialisms. I'm going to start off with being a profiler. So I'm going to tick that on the character sheet. If you can see that. We've got 2 sections for profiler and occultist. So when I do the full game, I'm going to redo the character sheets, because obviously there are going to be more specialisms. So I'll shift into profiler here, just so you can get an idea. These are the skills that a profiler has. Glimpse, that's see what the killer sees. And then there's also a profile skill. So essentially that means generating a profile using kind of the experience of a lifetime or a career of being a profiler or being an investigator. So you'll be able to draw out, like, all right, this is kind of the situation of the murder. So looking at that and building a profile in your head, given all of the different variables, profile of like who the killer is likely to be, either like how old they're likely to be, what race they are, living situation, that sort of thing. So this is where you'd be like, oh, it's a killer who lives alone, has like abandonment issues, or like has a van because they can move the body without being disturbed, that sort of thing. And where that information is gathered from when you use the profile skill is that's gathered from the dossier. So the dossier of the killer, you can say, oh, this is the killer. You can pull out some information from that dossier after the profile. So you kind of use that skill, and then that will give you some of the information about the killer. So we've got some character touchstones here. Frank Black, Will Graham. Samantha Waters was from a show in the 90s called The Profiler, or called Profiler. It was on NBC. It was essentially like Millennium, except a bit more mainstream and a bit more like network TV. Although Millennium was on Fox, so. But that's kind of like, she was same kind of idea. Like she was a criminal profiler and she could see through the killer's eyes. Same kind of idea. It had its strengths and weaknesses. She worked with more of a team, whereas Frank Black is kind of more on his own. But it's an interesting, like another one of those situations where there's 2 things that are on at the same time that are very similar to each other that aren't really connected to each other, just like it's in the zeitgeist. Anyway, Samantha Waters was from the show Profiler. So for Profiler, you get a +2 to your mind, which is one of the stats. Right, let's go back here. Okay, right, equipment. So the equipment, it started off in development that, because this is based on, it follows the kind of lineage of Into the Odd, Cairn, liminal horror, and this started off as a hack, more of a hack of liminal horror. So equipment inventory was more important. And at a certain point I made the decision to say, inventory is not that important to this, like mechanically to this game. You don't need to worry about how much stuff you have on you, how much fatigue you take on, that sort of thing. You don't need to worry about that. It's more about investigation and kind of yourself. So there is still equipment, and that's something I'm going to expand on in the full game, having like investigator tools that you can use. But this is more of a flavor thing at the moment. So you don't have to worry about how much stuff you have on you. Obviously, within reason, you're not going to carry around an ATM, like an actual physical 400-pound ATM. But this is kind of stuff that's more thematic, speaks to more who the specialists are, who the investigators are. So for Profiler, you carry around a photo of your connection, which is kind of an important part of your being, we'll get to later on. painkillers for headaches, and latex gloves. So I'm going to write those down. And obviously, later on, there might be situations where, like, if you have a run-in with a killer and you escape like if you escape without being killed, maybe they'll take your the photo of your connection, and that will be like kind of a thread that they'll learn more about you and kind of start stalking your connection, that sort of thing. All right, painkillers and latex gloves. And so this isn't, I should explain that this isn't a game that's, it isn't a procedural, it isn't a simulation. So you don't have to worry about saying, like, I put on my latex gloves while I do the investigation. It's assumed that you're just going to do that because you're a professional profiler. Like, you've been around enough that you know that you need to put on gloves. So it's not something that's going to catch you out. If you're like, oh, I want to like pick this up and have a look at it. I'm not going to say, oh, you didn't wear your latex gloves. So that means the evidence is inadmissible, that sort of thing. There's a certain level of professionalism and capability that's assumed, unless obviously like some wardens might want to play with that and say, well, no, you do have to say that sort of thing. But kind of in my own head, you don't have to worry about that unless that becomes an enjoyable part of the kind of the whole system for you. My approach is do what works best for your table. I can set out some guidelines. This is kind of what I would do. But once you have it in your hands and once you start running it, you can do whatever you want, basically. Make it your own. Okay, so I need to do the profiler psych profile now. So this is essentially gives you a little bit of an insight into the background of each investigator. So as always, you can roll on this table. You can make something up yourself. If you have an idea of like a type of investigator that you want to play, but it isn't reflected here, then absolutely go for it. If the warden's cool with that, then go for it. So I'm going to roll on these tables. It's a d6. All right, so how did I become a profiler? What path did I take? So 5, sociology professor. Interesting. So I took 3 or 4 sociology classes in university. Intro to sociology, I did criminal justice and criminal justice system, so criminology and criminal justice. Partly because I was so interested in it because of stuff like this. One of them was around moral panics, which was really, really interesting. It was about the media and criminal justice. So the idea of like this comes up in Millennium in one of the episodes, and obviously if you're a role-playing fan, you'll be familiar with like the Satanic Panic in the 80s, which was a moral panic. Parents thought that playing Dungeons and Dragons would get their kids into Satanism and black magic, actual black magic, that sort of thing. And because it was overrepresented in the media, that became the dominant idea, or that kind of became like a viral thought, a viral fear of like parents worried that their kids would turn to Satanism if they played Dungeons and Dragons. So that was a really interesting class. Anyway, I digress. So what did I say? Sociology professor, right. That's what Juan was before he became a profiler. Why did he leave the agency? So as your profiler, the assumption is that you worked for the FBI or another kind of high-ranking government agency. Could be the RCMP in Canada, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So why did you leave the agency? Kind of shorthand for why did you stop being a cop? So for Juan, it's I delved too far into a cursed mind and it nearly broke me. So this goes along with the seeing what the killer sees, seeing through the killer's eyes. Maybe Juan at one point was on a difficult case. He pushed too far, pushed himself too far, and it kind of, like, as it says, it nearly broke him. So after that, he needed to take a step back. All right, and what is Juan's biggest regret? So that's a 3. My profile sent the wrong man to death row for 20 years. So profiles are not infallible. Could be that two killers will have exactly the same profile, or 2 people will have the same profile, but it doesn't mean that it's the right killer, the right person in that situation. So that's Juan's biggest regret. Could be tied into the broken mind or the cursed mind as well. Maybe he delved into the wrong mind and then kind of that threw him off. So his profile was off because of that. Or he made an assumption. Right, okay, so I've got a decent idea of Juan. So to kind of summarize his traits, because I didn't do that earlier. So you have a round physique with a round face, rosy skin, shining eyes, and shaved hair. You speak in a blunt manner. You are humble yet cruel. All right, interesting. Okay, psych profile, done. Right, so now I'm going to roll for connection, haven, and vehicle. So this is a D10 for connection. So as I mentioned earlier, a connection is kind of the person that keeps you grounded in like the normal world, like the world outside of your job, the world outside of Oroboro. So your connection keeps you, like I described it before, as keeps you in the light, away from the darkness. So you need to rest and spend time regularly with your connection in order to kind of, specifically in this game, in order to restore your will. And we'll get to will in a second when it comes to stats. So yeah, connection is someone you spend time with in order to keep you grounded, to restore your will, and to kind of make you more of a human person, like return more to humanity. So I'm going to roll a d10 for that. 7. So colleague or comrade. Okay. So I'm going to say comrade, and this is my partner from the agency. This is where the names table comes in handy. So I'm going to re-roll a roll on that for name of my colleague. So that is 12. That is Bruce. 95. Bruce Torres. Okay. Oops, that's my connection. Bruce. All right. Bruce was my colleague at the agency. And when I left, I'm going to say that Bruce retired shortly after, or left the agency shortly after. So he's a civilian now. He's not involved with Oroboro. But he helps keep me grounded. Okay, next is Haven. So this is a place where you feel most at home. So it's not necessarily where you actually live, but it's a place where you spend time to kind of to unwind, to kind of let your mind rest, and like to become like mechanically it's to kind of restore your mind, any lost mind points, basically. So it's like it's just a place to relax and rest, and where you feel most at home, where you can be most yourself. Right, D20 for this one. All right, 18. A dead mall. Very interesting. So that is Haven. So dead malls aren't as prevalent in the 90s as they are now. So I'm going to assume that this is a... there was one where I lived in Edmonton for a while. Two malls right across the street from each other. One was kind of run down, older. Then the other one is new, all the new shops I went into. So the old one still had shops on the outside. Still had like big grocery stores, that sort of thing. But inside the actual mall, everything was shut down, and like still some food court shops, but pretty dead. So that in that mall, so this is that type of mall is where Juan will go to kind of rest. Maybe he goes and has a hot dog from the one vendor that's still left. He goes, hangs out there with Bruce, has a coffee. Okay, vehicle. So D12. Break out the D12. All right, 10. So he's got a pickup truck. So if you've ever been to Alberta, you'll know that there's a lot of pickup trucks. There were a lot in the 90s as well. All right, pickup. I say Alberta because that's where I'm from, in Canada. Okay, so age. So for age, it's 30 plus 4d6. So that's kind of low end would be what? 34. High end would be 56. If my math is right. Probably not. Is not right. Yeah, that's right. Assume that's right. Okay, so I've got to roll d4. Sorry, 4d6. So that is 11, 16. So I'm 46 years old. Yeah, I didn't want to have any like 20-year-olds because in order to be kind of recruited to Oroboro, you have to have some life experience. Generally, you have to have been an agent, or you have to have been around for a while. So I wanted to have that reflected. Doesn't make any difference. Just kind of flavor-wise, I think it's more interesting. Okay, so there we go. Now we roll stats. So this is what I was talking about earlier. So body, mind, and will. You can see on the screen there. Body is strength, speed, and agility. Mind is reason, memory, focus. Will is belief, spirit, resolve. The most important one is will, because that manages stress and determines fracture, which I'll explain. So you'll want to have a high will. But any roll is interesting, really. Okay, so I'm going to roll. First roll is 8. I'm going to write these down. Second is 10. And third is 13. So on the face of it, that is 8 body, 10 mind, 13 will. I think that sounds about right. With the profiler specialism, I get a bonus of 2 to my mind. So that takes it to 12. I'm not going to min-max. So 8 body. Just writing this on the sheet. 12 mind and 13 will. Yeah, so will is the stat. Every time you fail a save, you lose will. And that how much will you lose depends on what doom phase you're in. So if it's doom phase dawn, if you're in the first doom phase, you lose 1 point, all the way up to doom phase midnight, where you lose 4 will points. So that's why will is very important. So you can lose will quickly, but you can also restore will by spending time with your connection. So that's kind of the in other Cairn and Into the Odd games, there's a stat that kind of fluctuates as you kind of go along and get in fights and that sort of thing. In Rune Cairn, it's resilience. So that's your ability to avoid damage in a fight, in combat, or your ability to stay in the fight. So for Midnight of the Century, there's no combat. There's no equivalent kind of fluctuating stat. So it's going to be will. So that's kind of, you lose a lot of will, but you'll regain it by spending time with your connection. Okay. So for equipment, I also have a pager, notebook and pen, and a flashlight. Okay, again, mostly for flavor, but well, the pager, that's how Oroboro communicates with you. So if you weren't around in the 90s, or if you weren't old enough to kind of be aware of pagers, or if you haven't run across them on TV, it's just a little kind of device that would sit on your belt, or like you'd have it in your pocket, and you could get a message to that pager. So someone, if they wanted to page you, they would like call the number, and then punch in like a message, or punch in a phone number, and then that you'd get that message sent to your pager. So it could either be like punch in your phone number and like, oh, I need to call this person, or punch in like a prearranged code like danger 911, that sort of thing. It's strange because this is before text messaging, so you couldn't actually send a text message. Well, later on pagers you could, but kind of for the purpose of this, you could just send a number. So for when Oroboro wants to get in contact with you, they'll page you 2000, and you know that that's Oroboro, and you need to call the prearranged number to find out what they want, what they need. Right. Okay. So that is Juan Wheeler. So Juan Wheeler is 46 years old. He's a profiler. His connection is his colleague, Bruce Torres. His haven is a dead mall. His vehicle is a pickup truck. He spends time with Bruce in the mall, having a hot dog and grabbing a coffee to unwind. He used to be a sociology professor before he became a profiler, and now he's working for Oroboro. All right. I think that's a fairly interesting character. I've got some hooks that I could have some interesting investigations with. Oops. All right. Sorry. Flipping all over the place. Okay, so that is Juan, and he is a profiler. Now I'm going to do one for an occultist, so you can see what the slight differences are. And it's more for maybe for people who've never played a role-playing game before, or are used to kind of something that has a lot more crunch, a lot more mechanics to it. This is pretty straightforwardly. You just roll on the tables, and then that develops a character for you. And obviously you can replace any of the entries with whatever you like. Find the character that you want to play. All right, so I'm going to go back to the beginning. I've got a fresh character sheet all ready to go. And I'm going to do an occultist now. Right, so same as before, D100 for first name. That is 46, that's Jesse. Okay. And next is 1, Jesse Abbott. Hey, Abbott. If you like Robin Hood Men in Tights. Jokes are always funny when you have to explain them afterwards. Okay, so that's the name. Pronouns. I will say she, her. Just to keep it interesting. Okay, now let's do traits. I'm just going to run through these. Right. So yeah, I'm going to run through these and then I'll read them all out when I'm done. Just to kind of keep you from falling asleep. Alright. When I upload the VOD, like the kind of non-live version afterwards, I'm going to skip through this. Okay. Matted. I will do an investigator generator website as well, like I have with We Deal in Lead and with Rune Cairn. So basically, you refresh the page and it'll give you a brand new investigator for every time you refresh the page automatically, which saves a lot of time. Of course, you can always roll on the table, because I enjoy rolling on the table. But if you want to save time, you can. Okay. Virtue. And I've just gone dark. Okay. Bear with me a moment here. My one of my lights has gone out. I just need to plug it in. Do this. All right. Talk amongst yourselves for one moment. All right, and we're back. Okay. Assuming I haven't lost everyone. Nope. Good. Okay, so for traits for Jessie. So Jessie has a slim physique with a square face, weathered skin, alert eyes, and matted hair. She speaks in an eloquent manner. She is disciplined yet aggressive. Very interesting. Okay, cool. Oops. Back to the PDF. Now, specialism, I know that she's going to be an occultist. So let's have a look at the actual occultist. So touchstones are, as I said before, John Constantine, Johnny Smith, Frank Bannister. So from the Frighteners, Peter Jackson's film, the film Peter Jackson did before Lord of the Rings. Shot in New Zealand. Great film with Michael J. Fox. So he plays a paranormal investigator who can actually see the dead, but he fakes it. He fakes hauntings to kind of get people to pay him to clear a house. So he's like a fake Ghostbuster, but with actual ghosts. It's good, yeah, worth a watch. That should be on my Letterboxd Appendix N list. But I have a feeling it isn't, so I'm going to make a note of that. Okay. Right, so, yeah, those are the character touchstones. So again, with the stat bonus, so for Profiler, you got +2 to Mind. For Occultist, you get +2 to Will. Because Will is a stat you'd use more often with Occultist skills. equipment, you get a sigil, cigarettes and matches, lockpick, and tarot cards. So again, lockpick, that can be as mechanical as you want it to be, or it can just be like a flavor thing. Cigarettes and matches, because Constantine smokes a lot, and there was even a storyline where he got lung cancer, essentially, because of smoking so much. And he had to ask a devil to cure it. He tricked a devil into curing it for him. So, skills for Occultist, we've got Commune. Essentially, this is talk to the dead or speak with the dead. So either a corpse or a spirit, like if there's no corpse around, or if there's a spirit in the area, you can attempt to talk to the dead. There's a chance that you'll enrage the dead, which is always interesting and fun. There's also Herald, which is like that kind of psychometry, where you can read a glimpse of past, present, or future from someone or something. The heralds, where you pull that from, would be from the dossier, either of the killer or the victim. That's why it's nice having all of that information to pull from. So if there's something in there that the investigators haven't found yet, then one of these ways is, like, using one of these skills can get that information. Right, so I'm an occultist. Let's do the psych profile for Jesse. So what was your first encounter with the occult? So because the occultist, you're assuming that there's a kind of clear connection with the supernatural. So what was that, like, what triggered that? What was your first encounter? So 5. I had a vision of my own death and avoided the plane crash. So I'm being a bit cheeky here. Final Destination came out in 2000. But that's clearly what it's referring to. But it's fine. I'll allow it. I'll allow it for myself. So, right, that's my first encounter with the occult. I had a vision of my own death and avoided the plane crash. And ever since then, I've been able to speak with the dead. All right, how do I feel about my powers? 5. Awesome, it helps me get laid. Excellent. I'm glad I put that one in there, because I think it's a fun, it's a fun entry, and it tells you something different about the occultist. So Jessie uses it to her advantage. And what scares Jessie the most? 6. That the end of the world is welcomed by so many. Yes. So this is something that's gonna crop up kind of over the development of the game, or like in different places. Some people welcome the end of the world, and are actively working to kind of hasten it, and some people are not. So that's what scares Jessie the most. All right, cool. Right, let's do connection, haven, and vehicle. Same kind of thing. If I get duplicates, I'm going to re-roll just because it's more interesting. All right, 9. So Jessie's connection is a spouse. So I'm going to roll again on the names tables to see who Jessie's spouse is. 95. So, no, yeah, 95. That is Tony. Tony with an I. Okay. And 30. Tony Goodman. Spouse. So I'm going to say that that is Jessie's wife, or like kind of spouse, because in the 90s, in the Pacific Northwest, I don't know, my history isn't great. I don't know if gay marriage was legal at that point in that area. But let's assume they're kind of married for all intents and purposes, other than kind of the actual ceremony. And forgive me if it was legal back then. I don't think it was. All right, Tony is her spouse. Okay. Haven, where does she feel most at home? D20. All right. A diner. Very interesting. So like the Double R diner in Twin Peaks, let's say Jesse and Tony have a damn fine cup of coffee there every day, get some cherry pie, and then talk about the investigation. Okay, and last is the vehicle. That is 9. So that is an SUV. All right. I'm going to say, be a bit bougie and say Land Rover. All right. There we go. Haven connection vehicle. Right. How old is Jesse? That is 46 plus 30 is 15, so 45. All right. Okay, now roll for stats. Okay. 11, 12, and 10. I'm going to keep those as they are. So 11 body. 12 mind. And 10 will plus 2 is plus 2 for the specialism. So that is 12. So 11 body, 12 mind, 12 will. So I should talk a bit more about the stats and what they kind of cover. So you won't have to roll in Midnight of the Century unless something's risky or unless there's a dangerous outcome, a chance of a dangerous outcome. So if you're trying to do something like, if you're trying to force a door open, then that would be a body save. So you need to roll under your body score. So if Jesse was trying it here, I rolled a 3 against my body score of 11. That means it's under. It means I succeed. So pop the door. Budge the door with my shoulder. And then some skills, if there's a risk, then you need to roll for it. And you rolled against the appropriate stat. And when it comes to will, so there are certain things that trigger a fracture or a fracture check. So essentially, as you're going through your investigation, your will is slowly being whittled away. A, because it's taking it out of you, because it takes a lot out of you to kind of do the investigation, to like be in that kind of world, to put yourself either in the killer's eyes or the killer's shoes, or to kind of see this other world. So it takes that out of you. So every time you fail a save, you gain stress, and that stress reduces your will. Every time you use a specialist skill, so every time you kind of commune with the dead, that causes stress, that reduces your will as well. It also means that if you use a specialist skill that has a save, and you fail that save, then you lose twice as much will to stress. So you need to kind of be aware of that and manage your will accordingly. If your if you experience fracture, this is where it's like I've done development so much that I have to think back, like, because I've had different versions of it, so I'm like, what is the actual version now? So yes, if your will is reduced to 0, then you experience fracture. So you need to make a fracture check. So that's what this fracture table is for. Or if you roll a 20 on a if you get a critical failure on a save. So because it's a roll under system, 1 is good, 20 is bad on a d20 roll. If you roll a 20, which is the worst possible outcome, then you experience fracture. And if you confront a killer one-on-one, that causes fracture as well, because it's such a violent and kind of disruptive incident in your life. So you need to roll on the fracture table. So first you'd make a fracture check, which is kind of you need to roll your will. It's basically a will save. So a fracture check is a will save. If you fail that, then you roll on the fracture table. If you make the will save, then you don't need to roll on the fracture table, if that makes sense. And then if you fail the fracture check and experience fracture, then the condition gets put into one of these boxes. And you can only experience at the moment in the primer, you can only experience each condition once. But that's something that I'm looking at for the full book. It might complicate things, if that makes sense. Okay, right. So that's fracture. Yes, so those are the stats. So will's an important stat because you use it. So it's kind of even more important for an occultist, but for a profiler, it's important as well. All right, I'm going to take a breather to get some water. All right, so that is the profiler, that is the occultist. That's kind of I've showed you the primer. I'm going to pop back here, come back to the full camera. So that's Midnight of the Century as it exists right now. Obviously, some things are going to change in the full book, but kind of this is the core of the game, won't change too much. Like this is what it's going to be like. Using those, like drawing on those inspirations, and kind of this is the framework for it. And then the full book's going to add in more information for the setting, for the kind of time and place, more information around Oroboro, their actual history, their public history, what their actual goals are, what are they really looking to do. Also the magic and supernatural element of it. So there's going to be rituals, there's going to be outer powers, so that's angels and demons. How are they going to interact with the investigators, interact with killers, and with the world itself. Then I'm going to have additional investigations. So we've got the Widening Gyre, which is the introductory investigation. I've, as I said before, got some guest writers on board that are going to do some additional investigations for me. Some of those are going to be later Doom phases, so there's going to be kind of more chaos involved and a more difficult investigation. I'm also going to, assuming we hit the 3,000 pound mark, which we probably will, I'm going to have include random investigation generator and solo rules. So you'll be able to randomly roll up your own investigation with, sorry, my cats decided to help out as well. So you'll have a random investigation with a randomized or a randomly generated killer, victims, that sort of thing. And then you'll be able to play through that solo. So that's kind of what's the solo side of it is still in development. I'm still figuring out the best way to do that. Because I've got something that works for more mechanically driven stuff, like Rune Cairn and We Deal in Lead. But having it, this is not as mechanical. Like there's no combat, obviously. That actually brings me to another point, or a salient point. How does everyone feel about like no combat? Because I know a few people have said I'd really like to be able to like slap the killer in the head, like kick him in the face, that sort of thing. And then I've had the question like, what happens when if you can no longer trust the cops, if you can no longer trust Oroboro, which could happen. What then? How are you going to take down these killers yourself, like with no external help? So that's a question that I'm looking at now and kind of dealing with. So I guess the question for everyone watching, and I'll ask this a bit wider too, is like, how do you feel about having no combat? Do you think that I like the idea of it, like the default being no combat, and obviously having the potential for that to have like either a specialism that brings combat into it, or being able to kind of, or maybe that's the point of it, is that you don't need combat. You need to figure out different ways to take down these killers without just kind of shooting them in the head. So yeah, I think that's just a general question. How would you feel about having combat in the game in some version, in some way, some like form or another? That's kind of like what I'm mulling over now, and I'm looking at different options. But I think it would be interesting to get a read of like people who are interested in the game. Like, are you interested in it because it is no combat, or do you think it sounds cool, but it would be better if there was combat in it, or I'd like to at least have the option for combat. So I'll kind of leave that with you to mull over. Rangers throwing everything askew again. So Big Bat Theory said, I think of the end of Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill is a boss fight. The house is dark and he has night vision. Yeah, I was thinking, kind of, my reasoning was looking at endings of specific, like the inspirations for the game, like Seven, like Silence of the Lambs, Manhunter. So Seven, obviously, like, the death of, spoiler alert, the death of John Doe is seen as a failure, and that's like the John Doe wins in the end because of that, and that's kind of a combat moment. But then Silence of the Lambs, obviously Clarice has her gun, like she shoots and kills Buffalo Bill, but it's a confrontation, a one-on-one confrontation. So it makes sense in that situation because she's an active FBI agent. And then something like Manhunter, Will Graham confronts the Tooth Fairy like one-on-one. I can't actually remember if he kills the Tooth Fairy at the end. I don't think he does. I know there's a couple of different... I'm getting... Because Red Dragon, the book, Manhunter, the film, and then Red Dragon, the film, all do things slightly differently. And then something like Twin Peaks, where like it's more of a psychological confrontation, or like a spiritual confrontation. So yeah, like that's kind of looking at what would be most interesting, what would be satisfying. Wouldn't be really satisfying to confront the killer one-on-one and then just have the cops burst in and like arrest them, which is kind of the point, like the introductory investigation. That's one of the possible endings. The cops shoot and kill the killer if the cops go in with you, because that's kind of like that's how the world structure works. Like that's the structures of power. Like the cops are the ones who are sanctioned to kill, sanctioned to like use ultimate force. So I think it's going to be an interesting development to see. It might end up that I have some kind of combat, or at least have the resolution, like the confrontation, have that be a bit more mechanized. So Big Bat Theory says maybe you make a classification for the killers, and they each have a type of final confrontation. Yeah, I think that's another possibility, because there are going to be some killers who don't want to be, like, who are willing to be caught. Like, maybe that's part of it, and it's not going to be the same. Like, every situation is going to be different, every killer is going to be different, and every investigation is going to be different. But I think having that option in there, the more options, the better, I think. So, yeah, watch this space, I think, is what I'm saying. Is that the default's going to be no combat, but there might be situations where you have no other choice. And then having some kind of resolution mechanic for that, rather than just leaving it up to the warden and be like, just do a body save. And that's not that interesting. So yeah, watch this space is essentially what I'm saying for the development of the full game. And if you've backed the Itch Fund and you've got feedback from it, if you played it with your parties, or if you've kind of had a read through it, even if I know some people will have taken it and played it solo with other rules. So if that's the case, then please leave feedback on the Itch page. There's a section in the discussion board around playtest feedback. So please fill that out. That's really useful to see how other people are doing it. I'm going to be running my own playtests and gathering feedback from that and tweaking things as and when. Because this is still a game in active development, even though the primer is kind of ready to go, ready to play right now. But it is still in development, so things are potentially set to change. Big Bat Theory says, do you have a Discord? I do. I'll share it out in the chat. It's one that I'm trying to be a bit more active on, and especially I think that'll help with with kind of playtest feedback and stuff like that. It's another spot. So yeah, I'll share that out in the notes of this video. I won't kind of take me a few minutes to find it. Oh yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I should have remembered that I had it actually in the actual notes of the video. That's me thinking ahead and then forgetting that I've thought ahead. That happens way too much. Okay, so I think I'm gonna wind it down now. Does anyone is there anything that anyone anything you want to know about the game? Any other, anything that I haven't mentioned in the Appendix N or if you've seen the letterbox list, any other pre-2000 films or TV series that you think be like, yeah, that would be a good addition to the list, or I should check that out if I like serial killer films. Because this is like, it's odd, but Silence of the Lambs was always one of my favorite films growing up. Because it's a dark film, but I think it's just so well done. And like having that as kind of the template, seeing other films do similar things is always interesting. Yeah, 8mm. That's it's on the list, especially since it's tail end, like it's 99. So yeah, that one was good as well. Different kind of investigation. Yeah, I rewatched that recently, so that was a good one. Yeah, so found some odd ones too, like Striking Distance, which is a Bruce Willis one, where he's like a Coast Guard. Then there's some good Japanese ones, like Cure is really good, really interesting. But yeah, lots of cool stuff. There's some Korean ones that I don't think I've put on the list yet. Some of the early Chan Wook Park stuff. But yeah, good stuff. Right, unless there are any questions, I'm gonna wrap it up there. I will continue to do these like live streams as things develop, and I'm gonna, like, as the introductory or the kind of the additional investigations start coming in from the guest writers, I want to showcase some of those too. But thanks everyone for hanging with me today. It's one of my longer live streams, but I think it's apparently I had a lot to say. I will chop this up and add it, like upload it to YouTube, in different sections and annotate it and stuff like that. So if you want to look back on how I did things. But thanks everyone. Yeah, like I said, I will be doing some more of these things, so feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow me along on Discord if you want to keep track of the updates. There's also my newsletters in the video description too, so if you want to sign up for that and find out what's going on. All right, thanks everyone. I will see you next time. I'm going to switch to a thanks for watching screen.